and closed the door to the cozy old apartment behind us. "What should we do now, Sam?" he whispered in my ear. He turned us toward the moving boxes stacked in the living room. "Should we unpack those?" He turned again so we were facing the bedroom. "Or should I unpack you?" His lips quirked seductively as he asked the question. A wave of relief washed over me immediately. I had to learn to live with my guilt, just as Payton had learned to live with his. I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him. "Sean and Ashley are coming tomorrow. They can help us," I suggested, and nodded over at the bedroom, where the smell of fresh paint was still oppressive. Payton stepped ceremoniously through the doorway and gently slid me down onto the bed. He lay down beside me and pushed his sunglasses up into his ruffled hair. His eyes were serious, the way they always were. Serious but tender. I just wished looking into them weren't so painful. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Or tried to, anyway. Ever since the events at the cemetery near Old Achrin, the guilt had weighed more and more heavily on my mind with every passing day. I just couldn't get the things Payton had said out of my mind. "Now that I remember things, I realize how lost I really was during that time." What had I done to him and all the others? Seeing the pain in his eyes had made me realize I'd caused him centuries of immeasurable suffering by meddling in his earlier life. I lifted my hand to his cheek. His beard stubble was rough beneath my fingers as I stroked the scar I'd given him during my field trip to the 18th century. I kissed him again, and we sank back onto the pillows together. "Samantha Watts, pull yourself together and leave the past in the past already," I admonished myself. Payton could do it, so why couldn't I? I clung to him tightly and deepened our kiss. I needed to feel him, close, very close, because fear was eating its way into my heart. "It doesn't matter what you or I have done. Guilt and shame and hatred cannot overshadow the only thing I am left with." We'd never spoken about it, and we'd probably never be able to either. We couldn't forgive each other, and knowing that crushed me just as much as the guilt did. The two of us had conquered every hurdle, but in the end, our love was buried underneath pain. "I love you, Sam," Payton murmured against my neck, and I knew it was the truth. I pushed my hands underneath his shirt and pulled it off over his head. His skin was so warm, the scent of him so familiar. His heart beat in sync with mine. "I love you too," I whispered, closing my eyes to hide my tears. We'd just sat down at the temporary breakfast table we'd built out of moving boxes when we heard a knock at the door. I loved that sound. It was so much more pleasant than the shrill, ringing noise modern doorbells made, and the wrought iron lion with the knocker in its mouth had caught my eye right at the start of the apartment viewing. The high ceilings, the gigantic windows, and the decorative stucco on the living room walls had won me over immediately. Payton, meanwhile, had particularly liked the old floor tiles. I hurried toward the door because my warm socks were still buried in one of the boxes, and the tiles Payton liked so much were ice cold against my bare feet. "Hi, come on in." "Hi, I picked up some coffee at the store on the corner." Ashley balanced a tray of steaming cups on one hand as she passed me. I heard her giving Payton an earful about the mess as she picked her way through the apartment. "Madinva," murmured Payton's brother, Sean, who was carrying a toolbox and a package of protective sheeting. He dropped everything as soon as he reached the living room, and then wiped his dusty hands on his jeans. "Just as chaotic as it was yesterday," he remarked, shaking his head. But Ashley, who had made herself comfortable on top of Payton's old chest, reminded him. "When I moved in with you, we didn't even manage to get the bed put together before—" Payton leapt up, interrupting my cousin before she could finish the sentence, but I could already vividly imagine the way she and Sean had attacked each other, especially since I'd walked in on Ashley once, years ago, having a good time with our high school Casanova. And Sean? I had no illusions about Sean. He was a born seducer. His athletic exterior still hinted at the warrior he'd been when I'd encountered him in the Highlands in 1740. He'd been a charmer and a skirt chaser.